as well as one that points toward the commission. If you do want to speak on an issue, we will ask you, Danette, to come to the microphone so that when it's recorded and people want to listen to it on their computers at home, they can hear and understand what's being said. So with that, when Jen's ready.
Go ahead.
All right, we will call the meeting to order. Jen, would you take roll, please?
Commissioner Thill.
Here.
Commissioner Waldner.
Here.
Commissioner Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Corbin.
Here.
Mayor Lindsay.
Here. You have before you the agenda for this evening.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Seeing no appearances or acknowledgments, is there anything anyone wants to remove from the consent calendar?
Make a motion, we approve the consent calendar.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Seeing no old business, under new business. Approve the application for the street and alley closure long-term with Journey Construction, 6th Street between Egan Avenue and Hearth Avenue. And I'll ask Chad if he would like to address that.
Thank you, Your Honor. I can make a few comments, and then Corey Braskamp is also here from ESU as well. He may be able to answer any questions as well if he would like to speak or not. The city was approached by Dakota State University, and myself, Fire Chief Minner, Police Chief Meyer, met with those folks, Journey Construction and DSU, as they wanted to discuss the option of trying to close a street adjacent to the proposed Mad Labs building. A couple weeks ago, maybe up to a month ago, talked about that option, described the process to them that the city has used in the past, more of an administrative process for closing streets, facilitated mostly by the Public Works Department. But then we also realized that this would be more of a long-term proposal to close a portion of 6th Street, that it would be appropriate to come before the full commission. And so what they had accomplished since that meeting was to complete this form. I believe it's the same form that Public Works Department typically uses administratively to describe what their proposal is, with some signatures from the adjacent landowners, and also included as a site plan which shows their proposal. Just talking briefly, and this can come out in the discussion here, I suspect, as well, but talking briefly about some of the different concerns or questions that the chiefs and myself had brought up to the DSU and Journey Construction was the concern about closing the entire block from Egan to Hearth might be problematic for use for the folks in that block to the south. They would essentially not have use of the alley, at least exiting the alley to the north. And so what we had talked about was the possibility that only the west half of that block would be entirely closed, and then the east half of that block, only half of 6th Street perhaps could be closed, the north being the north half closest to the project, leaving the south half of the street open going east to allow traffic to still get to that alley. And that is the proposal that you see there today, here and in this drawing that was provided. In addition, you can see the dates requested from this March up until the spring of 2019. One of the things we talked, among other things, of course, was the timing. The city is tentatively planning to accomplish a water line replacement project in 6th Street in 2019, and we would like to have access to that street to accomplish that work. That does several things, but among those, it helps actually this project. It helps give the appropriate water flows, including fire flows, to them for this project. And so, as you can see noted in the document, it's mentioned the closure would end in the spring of 19, and we can get into whatever details necessary for you, but they understand that we want to have access to that street, or at least the asphalt portion of it, earlier in the construction season, so we can get done reasonably early in the fall, if not late summer. So with that, I'd be open to answer any questions, or if Chief Meyer has any comments, or Mr. Braskamp.
Well, and we had talked about that because some of the people that live in that alley and that, their garage is parallel to the alley and they do not have the ability to turn around. So for them, having the access, to egress to the north and going east, solves that. So, Corey, did you have anything more you'd like to add to that?
Not a whole lot. I know John was planning on being, Reiser from Journey Construction was planning on being here this evening. We got held up coming back from the Black Hills with kind of slippery roads, didn't get here. In talking to him on the phone, it's still fluid, the construction timeline. I think he put March, it's probably looking like at least mid-March now before we even start to fence that. Just, by the time we get all the bid documents done, the bidding, contract signed, notice proceeds through the state office of, the state engineer's office, so. And then they've always, in discussions with Chad and everyone else within the city, the biggest part, as soon as we can get the heavy stuff unloaded there, because it's a lot of precast panels, structural steel. As soon as that is erected, they will pull that fence back, as quickly as they can, to probably where that parking is, so the street will be wide open, so. That's the plan, and then, the utilities, so we should be completely out of the way before the water project starts, that's the goal. Everyone's aware of that.
That was my only big question is, I hate to, obviously you're putting the big trailers and everything right in that area, and as long as we can roll in there and have a nice smooth pavement after our project and stuff, that'd be awesome. So, and I'll throw out for the commission, this same company, Journey, did the Beacom building, and that was on Washington, which you could debate whether Washington is busier than Egan or not, but living there, they did a nice job. When they had trucks there, they got them unloaded, I think, rather quickly, and took care of it, and really were conscientious about their neighbors and everything else that they were working on. So, I'm real comfortable with that, them as a company doing this. And they also did the hospital. I know Tammy Miller talked about, they did a nice job out there as well. And we have actually a hospital board member here, but.
Oh, very good. Questions or comments?
Chad, the reference to 19, the water, the project of, would you be taking both sides of the street when you turn that whole?
Yes, that would be the plan to follow along, similar to what we had done this year.
Okay.
Plan to try to address those full street surfaces at the same time while we're doing those projects to start making headway in street repair, street improvements.
This year in the 17.
Correct. The one that I'm sorry. The one that we just accomplished last construction season. Yes.
Was that Northeast 5th?
Northeast 6th.
6th?
And I think it's to your advantage too to have them cleared out, because obviously with that better infrastructure for water flows and everything else, and obviously the fire protection part of it I'm concerned with, but it'll help your building and stuff as well. So with that, I'll make a motion that we approve the application for street and alley closure, long-term Journey Construction, 6th Street between Egan Avenue and Hart Avenue.
Second.
We have them.
Further
Yes.
discussion?
Yes.
Has there been any significant opposition for any reason to this? I have yet to hear any, so, to this particular project. University obviously has for this.
The homeowners we met with didn't.
One of the things in that we discussed early on was that they visit with the owners of the neighboring properties and those affected with the alley, and that was done. And you'll see on the application the two adjoining property owners and that have both signed off on it. So I feel very good about that.
Any other property owners or other opposition or concerns about this project?
I didn't have any concerns, Commissioner Johnson, but I had also, should let everybody know, I talked with Gary Gagnon as well about this, talking about snow removal and such, and he thought it would just be something that they would do their best to accomplish snow removal next winter, and any that would happen this winter yet as well, rather than pushing part of that responsibility onto DSU. He said it'd just be just as easy if they do it, so that would be his plan.
Thank you.
I might say one thing, it's got the application for street and alley closure. Alley is not gonna be closed, that's gonna be opened through traffic, so make sure that that is put on out to the people so they know that they can use their alley.
Thank you. I think that's clear, good to note for clarity in the minutes, because just the title on the form
Well, we use the
gives the
same form
impression
for
that
both.
we're
Same
closing
form.
some alley.
Yeah.
It's a
But they
standard
can
form for
still
both.
use the alley.
Yep.
Okay, with that, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Resolution number 2018-1, thanks, Corey. 2018-01, dedicate city-owned property as public right-of-way. And again, I'm going to ask Chad if you would like to address this one, please.
Thank you, Your Honor and Commission. In the agenda packet, you'll see several documents related to this, one being actually Resolution 2018-1, and then right behind that is, you'll notice a quick claim deed. That's a deed from a gentleman named James Byrne, deeding a described parcel of property to the city. That particular parcel of property was part of an alley years ago that was vacated because there was a garage too close to it, and the owner of the garage approached the city, and subsequent to that, City Commission agreed to vacate a portion of it. But within the vacation documents, it said if the garage ever gets tore down, a new one gets built, they'll fix the encroachment. And essentially, that did happen. A new garage was built. It's not an encroachment any farther. And so during the course of the sale of this property, the title company had contacted us. I worked with Attorney Jenks, and thought the best solution for this would be simply to rededicate this back to the city. And then so now this step that we're accomplishing here today actually takes a private parcel, it's technically a private parcel, and rededicates it to the public right-of-way. It's just kind of a housekeeping thing, really.
And just to clarify that, we're talking 3 feet.
Yes, it's just a very
So
small part.
it isn't that we're talking a large amount, but by adding that 3 feet back, it gives us a proper alley for public use.
Yes. That's really what this is.
Questions or comments? If not, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 2017-01, dedicate city-owned property as public right-of-way.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 3, first reading and set a date of hearing for ordinance number 1601. Amend Appendix B, zoning, change zoning district from R60 to R20. And this is something that has already been before Planning and Zoning, and Planning and Zoning has made their information to the City Commission. And I know there's a few people here that may want to speak to this now, but one of the things in that I want people to remember in that is this is a first reading. And so between now and 2 weeks from now, the Commission will be doing whatever research they need to do to determine how they're going to vote on it. There is not going to be a vote taken tonight, but it will be 2 weeks from tonight, if my memory is correct on that. And so that's when we'll have the date of hearing in that. So with that, what I'm going to ask is if you do want to speak tonight, keep in mind that from a commission standpoint, it's very difficult to remember what he said, she said, they said. So if there's something you want us to continue, to be thinking about, please submit it to the commission in writing within the next 2 weeks. And that before we have our public hearing. And if I'm saying something out of out of the way. David Jenks has got a good eye on me over here, so. But at this point in time, is there anyone that wants to address this? Chad, did you want to address this at this point?
I can just say a few things. Thank you,
Okay.
Governor. In the agenda packet, you see the draft ordinance, the typical process as outlined in the zoning ordinance, but also I think it's consistent with state law also, is that this goes before the Planning Commission and they review the request, acting as the Planning Commission, not the Board of Adjustment, and they make a recommendation. They've done that, the minutes are in the agenda. And then this rolls over to the City Commission where there's the normal ordinance adoption process with a first and second reading. But in addition, there's supposed to be a hearing also conducted by the City Commission. And in the past with zoning changes, that's been the option of the commission to have that hearing at the same time as the second reading. So exactly how you described it is how this is planned to proceed. And so you see in the agenda packet the proposed ordinance that you will consider first reading, and the proposed notice that will go in the paper. Ms. Eimers knows the notice requirements required for that. The minutes from the Planning Commission meeting of January 16th, an application from Opal Properties, Dustin Hendrickson on behalf of Opal Properties, a letter from Opal Properties, an email of concern from Tim Tucker. Those are the items in the agenda packet for you with this. And I'd be happy to try to answer any questions. The minutes are relatively thorough, although you can only kind of encapsulate so much with the minutes. But I'd be happy to try to answer any other questions I would have either before or after parties talk.
And at this time, is there anyone from the audience that would like to speak to this? Gary, would you come to the microphone, please, for the benefit of those at home?
I own two properties that are in that, and I've owned since April of 1990s at 705, and I bought the other one for my Schumer's wife after Royce passed away. And I don't think that house that's in the historic would be suitable to restore, because prior to me buying it, it had been apartments for several years before that, and it's been cut up, holes drilled in woodwork and everything. I mean, there's a lot of nice stuff there, but I don't feel that it's one that somebody's going to buy to restore because of all that. It's got 6 apartments in it, and so they've put countertop or cabinets, and then the building beside it used to be a garage, and it was converted into a 4-bedroom apartment before I bought it. And there's 3 apartments in the house that Royce had at 709, and yet there's a house that was moved in there in the 50s. It was an older house to start with. So I just wanted to let people know what the house actually is. It's not, there's been stuff fell off of it and tore off of it through the years. And that's about all that I needed to say about it.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak at this point in time? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the Commission. My name is Bob Starr. I live at 615 North Egan Avenue with my wife, Christine. And I do have some written comments, but the likely date of the public hearing, I am scheduled to be out of town for work. I hope my wife can make it and be part of the discussion, but just in case, I figured I'd better sit down and make a few comments. My written comments are gonna outline a lot more detail, and I will pass them around.
Chad, would you assist? Thank you.
But I would like to summarize them, and I think a lot of the concerns I have are shared by the neighbors. And I spoke to Judge Tucker, who is not going to be available throughout this process, but he received his email, and I think he raised some very important points. He did so more succinctly than I'm doing in my comments. But I would like to just take a few moments and walk through kind of general thoughts that my wife and I have about this proposal. And I really do think, if you look at our neighborhood in Madison, I mean, we really have a jewel as you go up and from downtown up Egan Avenue, tree-lined streets, you got Boulevard going up there, leading up to campus, and there's people that have been there a lot longer than I have. We moved here in 2006, so we're kind of new to the neighborhood, but the neighbors have put a lot of money into the properties, they've invested into the properties, and I think they really care about the neighborhood. They are, I think, open-minded to positive development and possibly even to potential changes, because I think if you look at the two affected properties here, there may be some challenges going into the future with them. But it needs to be something that fits in with the historical nature of the neighborhood, that fits well within the adjacent properties, and makes sense for the city of Madison. And with all the great things going on at DSU and new buildings, people coming to town, I think it's a real opportunity for us to look at Madison and say, what do we want the future to be? And I think folks that want to come in and be part of that, and I thank these gentlemen for looking at Madison as a place to invest their money and do positive things. I think we do need to hold them to an appropriate standard and ask them to work with the community, work with the neighborhood, and find a solution that is appropriate and fits into the nature of the historical district. I think a lot of us last week were surprised when we found out that the proposed development was going to involve 30 to 40 units. And if you believe the rumors out there or discussions out there, maybe even more. That was a lot more than I think we expected to hear. It raised some red flags, it raised some concerns. And if you look at the underlying zoning changes that would be required, going from R60, which, I mean, there are quite a few alternatives that could be used under R60 that could help develop these two properties in a positive way. But taking it from R60 to R20 really makes it pretty wide open in my mind. And if you look at the first bullet point in my wife's letter to the commission, if you look at what going to R20 would involve, you go from maximum building heights being 35 feet to 75 feet. And that's a dramatic increase. You are completely changing the character of the neighborhood. And I don't know that these gentlemen have that in mind. In fact, it seems like some of the recent plans I've seen look better, and they're saying they want to respect the historical nature of the neighborhood. Those are things I like to hear, and I think my neighbors like to hear as well. But if you do open it up under R20, you're going to look at greatly increasing the opportunity to build what might be a 5-6 story building. You look at increasing the footprint of that building from 40% of the lot to 80% of the lot. And now we're talking very, very high impact buildings in a residential neighborhood, and frankly in one of the nicer neighborhoods, not just in Madison, but across the state as far as partnering historic homes with a campus and a main street of a city. And there aren't a lot of places across the state or across the country look like Madison does in terms of our historic district. I think we have to exercise great care of that. So, you know, the question at hand, as Mr. Jenks would tell you, is the rezoning issue. And I think moving it from R6 to R20 would be a huge mistake. Because no matter what they say they're going to do today, and, you know, I think these are folks that have a little bit of a track record in South Dakota and, again, want to invest in Madison. I think we need to listen to what they have to say, but that change in zoning opens us up wide open to some development that I don't think anyone would think would be appropriate for the historic district next to campus. So, you know, what are the alternatives? You know, my understanding, and I would look to others for the details of what can and can't be done, but my understanding is there are several opportunities under the existing zoning, keeping R60, for them to do something that would meet the zoning ordinance and requirements and the expectation of Madison, that would respect the historical nature of this area of town, that would fit well with, I think, the neighborhood, and with some work, maybe be accepted by the neighbors. Certain conditions are met. And as we detail in the letter, I think one of the big issues is going to be parking. I think we need to make sure that that gets adequately addressed. And anytime you deal with campuses and neighborhoods, that's going to be an issue. We got a wonderful new building coming right across the street from this proposed project, right across the street from Nieder's house, Draper's house, my house. You know, let's make sure that that's going to be dealt with in an effective way. And, you know, let's give the neighbors the due in terms of making sure that this doesn't adversely impact them. It's a snow route. It's a route ambulances go up, fire trucks go up. It's a main corridor in town. We need to make sure that there aren't a whole bunch of cars on the street affecting city services that don't just affect us in the neighborhood, but people throughout Madison. You guys know how it goes. It's a corridor of 9th Street. That's a corridor to the northeast and northwest of town. So we need to be careful on how we develop this area. If you look at, you know, other communities, other towns across the state, across the region, and I got to see a little bit of what they're getting a little more detail on what they might look at doing as far as this housing is concerned. I mean, I think if you can get something that is lower impact, lower number of units, deals with parking issues, deals with some of the concerns of the neighborhood, that's done in a manner that respects the historical aspects of the neighborhood, I think this could be a positive development. So there's a lot of conditions there, but I think I, for one, my wife, my family, are willing to have those conversations with the developers, work with them, and evaluate whether or not there's a possible solution that would both improve the neighborhood, improve those properties, and help Madison in the long run. But the problem with this zoning change is it will dramatically change what can be done in the neighborhood. And I didn't really know very much about the Madison zoning laws, but when I looked at the map, I have to give credit to you and your predecessors. A lot of it seems to be pretty sensical in this area and around town. And you keep corridors that are residential. You acknowledge that some are going to be a little bit mixed use with maybe residential and something a little bit different, like in our neighborhood. And then you pick out some appropriate spots where, I mean, we're a college town, right? Where you need to be able to build some higher density housing. I think actually the current zoning makes a heck of a lot of sense when I look at it and think about what do I think the future of this central part of Madison should look like. I think if you start turning those spots along North Egan Avenue into that R20 district, give people the opportunity to develop, you know, and it may not be their idea, maybe the people that own that property of the future, maybe a neighboring property. You start letting the ability to come in and put basically, as Judge Tucker described it, as dorms or apartment style housing into the historic district, I think that's gonna be a decision that we're gonna regret. So what I would encourage you to do is to say no to this request, but also encourage these developers here to work with the neighbors, work with the city, and look at what alternatives are available that meet current zoning requirements, that will fit the historical nature of the district, that will address some valid concerns of the neighbors. And you might just find out that we're gonna end up having a situation where we can see this improvement come to Madison and do so in a way that fits in well with our community. And I, for one, will have an open mind. We'll continue discussion and communications with these guys, but we do have to make sure those markers are hit. And the second you turn it to R20, it's gonna be wide open, and you're just gonna deal with one after another, I think, requests for rezoning. And pretty soon, it's gonna be what Judge Zucker is describing, a line of apartments, dorms, along the wrong side of campus. And, you know, if you think about it within Madison, if you look at some of those areas where the green exists, not just in our neighborhood or somewhere else, there are some parts of Madison where there would be a good opportunity, a good fit for this type of development. So I think there is a potential, if they want to stick to the higher density units, to look elsewhere. It doesn't even have to be very far from campus, but putting it right into the main residential part where the historic homes are just simply doesn't make any sense. So I thank you, Mayor, thank you, Commissioners, for the time to address the group today, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any comments.
Well, and thank you for, putting your thoughts in that, in writing, because this is what we need as a commission, because I can guarantee you in that 3 days from now, I'm going to say, now, what was it he said? Where at least here 3 days from now, I can refer back and say, oh, this is what he said. And so I really appreciate it in that, that you have it in writing. And that's what, I'm asking, from everyone else that has a concern is to please share it with the commission in writing like this, so that as we go through the next couple weeks, we have other things to address as well. But when it comes to this 2 weeks from now, we will have had a chance to gone over this and visit with our attorney and, gotten our questions answered, so that when we as a commission come in and make a decision, we'll feel that, the decision we're making is the right one. So I really appreciate it. Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Bob.
Okay.
I'm Lois Nieder. I live at 622 North Egan Avenue, so right across the street. I will tell you, in 1988, when we bought our house, it was also on the list to be tore down. It had been apartments for 40 years, and the neighbors had told us it had been on the market for 3 years and that they were going to buy it and tear it down. So sometimes things can be rehabbed, not that that's going to be the case, but just as an example, it can happen. We do know that this is in the historic district. That is drawn out, and there are maps that include those properties on the historic district. So we do know that there are regulations that the historic district requires in order for anything to be built on that property. I know in the planning commission meeting you have the minutes of that. Chad talked about it didn't meet the criteria to be called spot zoning, but I think if you change zoning in 2 lots of an area, a neighborhood area, that in my mind is spot zoning. And I ask that you take that into consideration. I know Madison has done a great job of doing some long-range planning, and I think, like we've said, it's a great idea. I just don't know that that's the location for it, or if they want to use that location, perhaps not 30 to 40 units. Parking is already an issue around campus. We have cars going in many directions, and people come visit people who are in those units. They will, they may cohabitate 1 or 2 in even smaller units, so you're going to get 1 or 2 cars. Most college properties leases are 11 to 12 months, so even though they say that it won't be as busy in the summer, we know now that kids are sticking around with summer jobs. If they have those leases, they're staying around, they are living there, they are working there, and if not, they're subleasing to other people because of an expense issue. So those can be issues too. I have called the police, not on numerous occasions, but I have called the police for activity that has been at the property now, and that's with 6 people living in one building. So you multiply that by a potential age group, and I just foresee that there's gonna be issues with safety and other concerns that I would have on that property. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else who'd like to speak before the commission?
You make copies of this one down. The first two speak, my name is John Draper. I live right next to the property at 21 North Egan. I lived here all my life. Other than a few years, went to school at DSU. My wife and I are both graduates. We're not against progress at all. But like Bob Sara had mentioned, that we just don't think this 30 to 40, 50 unit apartment is going to fit in that small area. We've had problems in the past. We've been here for 16 years with traffic and garbage and people parking on our side of the lawn, taking our lawn furniture and using it in their parties in the backyard. Police have been over there a number of times, especially, won't mention any names, but in the last few years there have been quite a few domestic violence calls to the police department. And when you, like Lois said, if you multiply that 10, 15 times with the number of people that are there, it's just going to get worse. And I know they had mentioned they're going to have security cameras and the police monitor any reports of any problems with that many people living in that small area, then that'll take care of itself. But it really doesn't, because there's only so much manpower the police department has to take care of these issues. But one of my big concerns, other than the historic area, taking away the aesthetic look of the homes there, is when you're building any kind of large structure next to some older houses, there's some construction problems with the neighboring properties as far as cracking, the ground changing the rigidity in the structures of I mean, these houses are like within 20 feet of where I live. So if somebody's doing some construction, we hear about it. We can feel it moving the house. And if you talk about this size structure, then you could probably have some problems with our house, with cracks and problems with that type, vibration, excavation, heavy traffic, debris. And it's probably just a temporary thing, a year or so if they build that, but it might be something I can't fix. I know there's engineering studies that done on this, and most of the studies that there's definitely going to be problems. Now, if it's a smaller scale with less vibration and less construction, then it probably won't be as big a problem at all. I know it depends on the contractor and stuff. But, I appreciate your time, and I'll leave this so you can have copies of it. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
My name is Dustin Henderson. I'm with Opal Properties. Thanks for having me. To address some of Bob's comments, the street is really beautiful, and the location is awesome because it's really walkable to downtown in Madison, or the school. So those are some of the reasons why we picked this location. It's a really, really good location, and it's a beautiful neighborhood. So the last thing we want to do is go in there and make it worse. We want to come in and improve it. Another thing, the amount of rooms that we can have on there currently, we could take those houses down. We could put 4 unit 4 bedrooms, which would create 16 beds in each unit, and we can do 2 of those, one on each property. So you have 32 tenants. You have capacity of that. We have found out we have a lot of rentals. We have 4 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 1 bedroom efficiencies. The 4 bedrooms are the worst as far as partying. So we have a bunch of duplexes that we have where they're 3 bedrooms and 4 bedrooms. And we have by far the most complaints in that neighborhood with parties. Not necessarily cops going there, but just noise complaints. We have an efficiency unit in Brookings that we have almost 0 noise complaints. Cops never get called there. It does have the surveillance footage, and we let the cops use that when they need to, which would be the same. We would have that option here as well, because we feel that some of the female students, their parents, they feel they're much safer when there's surveillance 24 hours. As far as the disturbing the house, that's never happened to us yet. We build very close to houses. If we did a small foundation, the process is still the same with the way that we're going to construct these as if we did a large one. There's no more compaction necessarily. It would just be more feet of digging. And a lot of times we don't even have to compact if the soil is good. If it's not, then we have to over dig and compact a little. But it's never happened. I mean, I could see that it would, if it did happen, that we would be responsible. We have insurance for that stuff. Another thing is the amount of tax dollars that the city or the county is going to get. It will increase the taxable value by about 10-fold. And that's what we did on that piece in Brookings. They gave us a planned development district, which is a PDD. Instead of changing the zoning, they said, why don't you do this? That way they can control exactly what the building is, and it's a one-time stamp on that particular area. I wasn't aware that you guys had that, and when I talked to Chad, this is the route. For us to be able to build this is the first step. We have to get rezoned to get that density of the units. So we're not opposed to doing a PDD, which would mean that it's not actually zoned R60 or R20. We're not opposed to that. We do feel that the efficiency units, though, are more something that the campus needs, and it's kind of a newer trend. People want to have their own units, but they don't want to have a lot of roommates, and they don't want a big unit that they have to pay for. So we're building a lot more efficiencies in 1-bedrooms than we have in the past.
When you say efficiency unit, what kind of square footage are you talking?
350, roughly, 350 square feet.
350 square feet per unit?
Yeah, and it's just all one open room with the kitchen, bed, couch, everything's in one room.
Okay. And you say you have built one of these already in Brookings?
We built, it's not, the one that we have conforms more to the neighborhood, and this one would conform much more to the neighborhood that it's in now. It has steep roof, a lot of ornamentation on it for what it is. It's not like a standard apartment building.
Have you shared any of that with the neighbors and that?
No, it's not really
Not
ready yet.
Okay.
I just have in my head I know what it's going to look like, but it's hard to explain it, describe it. We are getting professional renderings done. It's kind of spendy, so it's kind of a risk, if we get shot down immediately, it's quite a bit of money out the window. But we figured that we might as well just try and see what the public thinks.
Okay. So I guess my next question was going to be is, would you have any kind of a rendering and that available before our meeting in 2 weeks, and that you could
I sure would hope
share with the neighbors and that?
I would hope so. I mean, I'm not opposed to meeting with all the homeowners and addressing any of their concerns. I can shape the building how need be, but I do have an idea of what it should look like, but a lot of changes can still be made to it. It's really preliminary.
So now I'm going to pick your brain a little bit more here then. Are you looking at it being taller, longer, or how do you get that many units?
Deeper.
Deeper?
Yeah.
Okay.
And a little bit wider. One thing about the parking too is that if we have this many units next to the campus, the kids are going to park in our lot in the back, and they're going to walk to school, and they're going to walk downtown. So it eliminates a lot of the traffic that would be commuting into the campus as well. And we have found that in these units, it is not one car per unit. We have two units. We have one unit downtown Brookings that we only have 5 available parking spaces for seven locked apartments. And then there's like 14 offices, and we don't have that. It's not a parking issue.
Well, our current ordinance in that is 2 parking units per unit.
Right.
Which if you're looking at 30 units, that would be parking for 60.
Right.
If you were looking at 40 units, that's parking for 80. So now you've got a pretty good size, area in that needs to be made into parking lot.
And these are all important questions, and these are all fair issues.
Yes.
But I do want to tell the commission that what the commission should be considering when they consider this in 2 weeks is whether the rezone is orderly and proper for that neighborhood. It would be very dangerous to base a decision on what may or may not happen there. Developments fall through. Things change. They don't comply with other land use or zoning ordinances. This is all good. There's nothing wrong with asking about how far deep in a lot, what's it going to look like. That's all fair. But what I would encourage you to do, and what I think the law promotes, is that you are to look at your current zoning ordinance, you are to look at what it is now, you are to look at the request, and to see if it is a fair, reasonable, and orderly, appropriate change, not knowing what's going to go on there. Who knows what's going to go on there? But what's the difference between our 60 and what is the difference between our 20? What becomes possible with a switch from R60 to R20? I would caution the commission to make a decision based on drawings or plans, because we don't know what will be allowed, we don't know what will actually happen, we don't know what will actually be proposed. So it's really what it could be, it's not what is being purportedly proposed.
We could look at plans and then a week later they change.
Sure.
We could be looking at a 1 level and then before you know it, you got a 5-story building on it.
We're really looking at the impact and the meaning of R60 to R20.
Yep.
Irrespective of what may or may not happen on that lot.
Got it.
What can happen, and is that something that you find appropriate and beneficial for the city?
Good advice, thank you.
And then, David, are you familiar with what he just mentioned, a PPD?
I am generally familiar with them.
Okay, that's new to me. Chad, are you familiar with it?
We have one planned development in town, so we don't do them very often at all. And I'm not very familiar with it, but just Dustin just asked me about that a few moments before the meeting, so I was able to quick skim it, some of the requirements and such. And one of the ones that stuck out in there is, and from my recollection when the other one was done, which was probably in excess of 10 years ago, it's typically for a larger area, and actually in the ordinance it talks about 5 acres. Really, it really is a prerequisite for an area to come in, or a developer to come in and look at an area 5 acres. I think it literally says 5 acres. So it's looking at more of a larger concept area with probably more than just 2 structures on it. We're talking 2, maybe a commons area or something like that. Again, so I don't want to talk about too much because I haven't delved into it, but that's one thing I was able to glean from the 5 minutes before the meeting until now when we looked at it.
Well, that's one of the things when I started out is, the commission needs as much information and input as we can so that we make the proper decision when we get here 2 weeks from now. And so I thank David for pointing that out, and I thank you for bringing up PPD because it's something that I had never heard of before. And that, so with both of that in mind, and that, I understand where David is coming from. We need to look at the possibilities regardless of what what's put out there. So from now till 2 weeks from now, the more input that we have, the more knowledgeable we become. It'll certainly make it a lot better for this commission to make the proper decision moving forward. So.
And we should allow this thing to have its hearing on February 5th.
Absolutely. So.
I feel.
Did you have more you'd like to add at this point?
Just that I'd like to work with you guys to figure out whatever needs to be done. And that PDD is usually used when there's all kinds of, unusual circumstances. Like, can we get rid of an old building and bring in something much better? Do we need some use here? Is there a reason why it's growing around here where it's different than it used to be? And, maybe some of the zoning rules are getting a little outdated. And, the buildings are getting quite a bit different from 30 years ago, the new ones that are getting built all across the bigger cities, where people want to live closer to where they work and live. So, and that's why we got the PDD in Brookings, because they didn't know what a mixed-use building was, and they didn't really have zoning for it, so that's one of the reasons.
I feel since David brought that up, you can work with the engineering department and building inspector is out of there, and then they can come back and refer stuff to the commission, because they are kept up on that a lot better than what we do.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak?
May I just ask one question?
Yes, Chad.
And we could talk about this on the side. The PPD, was that in your downtown development or for that standalone residential structure?
It was a downtown piece.
So not
We
just
took
a
3
standalone?
lots. Yeah, we took 3 lots, and then we bought another. They wanted us because they didn't think there'd be enough parking. We had to buy another lot to put more parking in there. It's always empty.
And that was for like a mixed use
And that's
application?
23 units with 6 commercial units. It's got a brewery in it, barber, a couple offices. And we've got 48 spots total, and we only use half of them.
Anyone else that'd like to speak?
Are we setting, does this, set the first reading and date of hearing? Is that simultaneous?
Date of hearing?
That's what
Yep. And the date of hearing, Jen, you've got the calendar there, would be
2 weeks from today,
February 5th, isn't it?
February 5.
February 5 at 5:35 p.m.,
So then
correct?
If we do this, we're setting the first reading and date of hearing.
Correct.
Right.
Approve it.
So it's
Approve
not
the
Approve
first
first
reading.
reading.
Okay. And then I'm interested in your comment about, I think we need to have this.
I don't think we should kill it right now. If we're leaning that direction, we ought to let them have their hearing and let everybody involved be, if they're say.
One more thing.
Yes.
The Historic Society, we have to work directly with them to
Yes.
approve anything. So we can't just build anything that we want, even if they did get something, so.
We're
Everything.
looking more at, just from our standpoint, what our options are.
Right.
And this is something that Chad did provide me with earlier, was the standards from the Historic Society and that, and I did make some extra copies, so if there's anyone who wants to take a copy with them tonight, and that I have them printed out here, which they do have input because this whole area is in the historic district. So,
Your Honor?
yes.
I don't, maybe didn't make it clear. The Planning Commission minutes were in here, but they did provide, and actually now I think about Mr. Sarr maybe mentioned the Planning Commission. Actually, he included in his written comments, but he may or may not have said it, but they did recommend to deny it. That's part of the thing they're supposed to do, is provide a recommendation.
Right.
I don't know if I made that clear.
Yeah, it is clear, and that's something that we'll take into consideration 2 weeks from now, when we have the hearing.
If we have the hearing 2 weeks
We should approach this one kind of the opposite of what we normally do when we have changes, where we spend a lot of time on the first reading and then we kind of just glaze over the second reading. We should just set up the hearing and whatnot tonight and then spend a lot of time looking into it at that second
I appreciate your
reading.
interpretation.
The difficult part of that is sometimes in that we don't find out all the other things we need at the first reading.
Well, that's
what
why we
gives us
need
the
to
2
give
weeks.
people a heads
Yes.
up that they have 2 weeks for when this is going to
Yes.
Does it have
come
to be 2
before
weeks?
us.
Could it be a month? Could it be 4
I
weeks?
believe it could be a
It
month.
can, it has to be a minimum of 2 weeks, but it can be, you can set the date of hearing beyond that.
And I know as a commission, we can't meet on it, but they can certainly meet. Can there be like public open meetings? Like if y'all want to meet at the library and sit down and hash this out a little bit more?
As long as you're not there.
Yeah, as long as
Can there
there's
be-
2 or 3 of us not there.
Can there be 1 or no? 0?
Yeah, you cannot have a quorum, so there can be 2 commissioners available, but not 3. That does not include the city engineer, it just includes the 5 of us here. There can be no more than, 2 of us at a meeting that is not announced. Am I correct on that, David?
That's correct.
Okay. So,
What's your recommendation, David, on, shall we go 30 days or shall we go 2 weeks?
I don't have a legal my job, Bob, is to tell you that we have to go a minimum of 2 weeks. You can certainly go more. I don't have strong feelings from the legal perspective on whether you go 14 days or 15 days or 30.
If I were to vote on this tonight, I would probably vote against it, but because I've heard a lot of things, said that I need more time to process. 2 weeks doesn't seem to do it for me.
So I'm going to ask.
So I'm not going to, I'm not telling you at this point I'm entirely opposed to it. I've heard some openness and some of the things Bob said that, we'd look at some possibilities.
Would you prefer 3 weeks or 4 weeks?
Well, I would just soon go a month, 30 days on it. But I also agree with Jeremiah, things have a right to be heard.
Not that this matters particularly. I will not be here in 3 weeks. I will be here. I could be here in 2 and I can be here in 4, but I would not be here on the 3rd week, if it matters to you.
Just the 12th.
Sorry?
The 12th. 2 weeks would be the 5th. 3 weeks would be the 12th. That's the
I
day
am
you're
not available on the 12th.
And then the 19th and the 26th.
I'm available on the 19th.
19th's the President's Day.
Good call. Oh, you know what? We work President's Day
We
now.
work
Oh,
that.
Yep.
all right, never
I'm gonna
mind.
change that on you. This year, is that new?
Next year.
So I
I-
have some,
I-
I
I
have
have-
some reservations about the 12th, just because I can't be here.
I'm going to put it out to those people who are here. Does the 19th sound like a more reasonable time for everybody to have more time? Okay.
Better than 2 weeks?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor and Mr. Commissioner, would you like to set a date for the written comments to be received perhaps a week ahead of the meeting so that you're not getting them on the
That would be helpful.
on the Friday before the meeting and have to burn through that? If you have a week to
It
review the
would
written
be
comments?
nice to have, as many written reports in as soon as possible.
Yeah.
And yes, by the 12th of February, written comments and then I am not opposed to having the hearing on February 19th.
I would prefer that you not set a deadline in the motion.
Very good.
For written comments. I would ask that you announce that if you want the comments to be considered, that they should be in a week before, but not make it part of the motion.
They could walk in with them and give them.
Correct.
at any time, so.
It's just helpful to us to get things.
Yeah, it's helpful
Yeah, timely.
to us to be able to review everything and that ahead of time. So with that, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion, we give first reading, set date February 19th for ordinance number 1601, zoning.
Second?
zoning.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bid number 867, review specifications and set a bid date for the sidewalk improvement project 2018-1. And I'm going to ask Chad to address this, please.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. In the agenda packet is the advertisement for bids for the sidewalk project, incorporating what you approved in December for the areas for landowners to install sidewalks, and also you made a resolution of necessity for the repairs that haven't been completed. These plans, put those into a bidding document. The bidding document allows the landowners within it, it allows the landowners to complete the work by right around July 15th. And then if that work is not accomplished after that, procedurally, we authorize our contractor to install those at that time. And then landowners have the option to pay that contractor back those direct costs if those are submitted timely, typically before, well, most specifically before the resolution of the assessment roll. The assessment roll is filed. After that, then they would be subject to the normal assessment process as outlined in the statutes. So that's just a little bit about some of the mechanics behind this, but it's a similar process, or the exact same process, quite actually, that was used in previous years for accomplishing the sidewalk work that you previously reviewed.
Questions or comments? If not, do we have a motion?
I make a motion, we approve bid number 867 to review specifications and set the bid date for sidewalk improvement project 2018-1. And what was that bid date?
15th of February, 10 a.m.
February 15th at 10 a.m.
Got it.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. So under announcements and that, if anyone would like to have input that would really help the commission understand what's going on with the ordinance number 1601, please submit your written comments and that to City Hall, and that hopefully prior to February 12th for the commission to consider it. So, and with that, do we have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.